Tied tightly to a rusting lamppost stood an elderly black man, barely able to stand on his trembling legs. His tattered army jacket, faded with time and dignity, still bore the faint insignia of service, a reminder of battles fought, not just overseas, but at home. His weathered hands were bound behind him with plastic zip ties, cutting into his skin. Sweat and shame trickled down his face, but he held his head as high as he could. 3 uniformed white officers stood nearby, phones out, snapping pictures and filming video as if this were a joke for their group chat. One officer leaned in, grinning. "What's the matter, old man? Lost your stripes?" Another mockingly saluted, then burst out laughing, nudging his buddy. "Hey, maybe he's just waiting for backup from 1943. The third officer lit a cigarette and chuckled, saying nothing, just watching, as if this kind of cruelty was routine. A crumpled paper sign taped to the veteran's chest read, "Our new security guard." A twisted attempt at humor. Passers-by avoided the alley. One teenage boy pulled out his phone to record but was quickly chased off by a glare from the cops. No one intervened. The veteran said nothing. His eyes, glassy and distant, stared forward. He had survived war zones, but nothing prepared him for the humiliation on his own soil, in the town he helped protect, at the hands of men sworn to do the same. And none of them knew who his son was. Yet, the front doors of the small-town police station whooshed open with a soft hum, letting in the late afternoon sunlight, and with it, a presence no one expected. A tall, confident black man stepped inside, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit that contrasted against the casual uniforms and scuffed boots of the officers lounging around the front desk. His shoes clicked authoritatively on the tile floor as he moved with calm precision, a leather briefcase in hand, and a badge clipped discreetly at his belt. The front desk sergeant looked up from his paperwork, startled by the man's quiet confidence. A few officers nearby stood up quickly, assuming he was some high-level visitor from the State Department, or worse, Internal Affairs. "Can we help you, sir?" one asked cautiously, posture stiffening. The man offered a small, firm smile. "You certainly can. I'm Chief Langston. I start today." Silence fell over the lobby like a guillotine blade. The air shifted. The sergeant's pen dropped. Another officer nearly choked on his coffee, spilling it down his uniform. The color drained from their faces as the realization sank in. Chief Langston's eyes calmly swept the room, locking briefly on each officer, some familiar from his background file reviews. Then his gaze stopped on a young rookie, wide-eyed and innocent. Langston nodded once. The rookie nervously saluted. "I'd like to see the shift logs, personnel conduct reports, and all internal complaint files for the past 6 months," he said, setting his briefcase on the desk with. Chief Langston sat alone in his new office, the blinds drawn, casting long shadows across the walls. The overhead light buzzed softly, the only sound in the room aside from the ticking of the wall clock. The once pristine desk was now scattered with files, printouts, and evidence reports from earlier that day, one image resting prominently on top. He picked up the photo with steady hands. It was printed from a cell phone recording, grainy but unmistakable. An elderly black man, bound to a lamppost. A zip tie dug into his wrists. His face, tired, humiliated, proud despite it all. Langston stared at the photo, his breath shallow, his jaw tight. Slowly, he turned it over. A timestamp. A date. Just yesterday. He looked again, this time longer. The angle captured just enough of the man's eyes to remove any doubt. It was his father. The same man who had taught him discipline, who sat front row at his graduation from Quantico, who never talked about Vietnam except to say, "I fought so my son wouldn't have to." And yet here he was, tied up like an animal by men who wore the same badge Langston now commanded. He didn't flinch. No outburst. No tears. Just a quiet steel that settled over him like armor. He set the photo down slowly, with reverence. Then he reached for the desk intercom, pressing the button with precise force. His voice came out low, clear, and lethal. "I want every officer involved in that incident, in my office. Now." There was no mistaking the tone. It was not a request. It was a summons. In the silence that followed, the storm gathered behind his eyes. And it was coming for all of them. Camera flashes lit up the chamber as reporters, citizens, and veterans packed into every corner, murmuring with anticipation. The air buzzed with a rare mix of outrage and hope. A community waiting to see if justice would finally rise where silence once ruled. At the front of the hall, a large screen displayed a photo of a younger man in uniform, crisp army fatigues, medals pinned proudly to his chest. The man in the image stood tall, decades younger, but unmistakably the same man who had been zip-tied and humiliated just days before. It was a tribute, not just to his service, but to the dignity that others tried to strip away. Gasps rippled through the room as 4 uniformed officers were led in, their hands cuffed behind them, heads down. 2 of them had the decency to look ashamed. The others wore the blank expressions of men who never thought they'd face consequences. Chief Langston stood at the podium, his presence commanding, his eyes scanning the room before settling on the press. He spoke calmly, with the weight of generations behind him. That man on the screen fought for this country when it didn't fight for him. And yet he still stood proud. If men in this department think it's acceptable to treat a hero like a joke, they're unfit to protect anyone. The room erupted in applause, led by a group of veterans.